Good evening, everyone. I see a lot of good evenings coming in, so I hope there are a few people who have already joined in. Banking aims to be an educational webinar to sort out some of your queries and your doubts about stem cell banking, and I hope it is of some use to you. Uh, just to introduce myself, I am Dr. Ruchira Misra. I am a senior consultant at SRCC Children's Hospital in Mumbai. I work as a pediatric oncologist and a bone marrow transplant physician at SRCC Hospital. I joined this place about 2 years ago, but I have been working in India for the last about 12 years and working for pediatric oncology and bone marrow transplants here. So that's just a brief introduction about myself. And just to tell you about why we wanted to do the webinar today is because we find that there are a lot of questions about cord blood banking, about stem cell banking, and doubts around stem cell banking and bone marrow transplantation. A lot of people are approached for cord blood banking and they don't do cord blood banking because they're not sure whether it's going to be beneficial or not beneficial for their child. So we will sort this out. I hope there are a few obstetricians and gynecologists also in this webinar today, because most of our expectant mothers would be going to the obstetricians, their own obstetricians, to ask them about the benefits of cord blood banking. And if you do not have answers, then it is very difficult to be able to counsel an expectant parent to whether they should actually go in for cord blood banking or not. There are a few guidelines about cord blood banking, which the Indian Association of Pediatricians have actually formed, in which the Hematology Oncology Group of the Indian Association of Pediatrics was a big thing, informing the guidelines, the consensus statement that we published in IAP, of which I was a part as well. And there are some recommendations that we have made for cord blood banking for such this situation, and I hope the webinar will sort out these questions. So what we actually did in a survey, we found that at least about 55% of the expectant mothers were not sure whether they wanted to do cord blood banking. For about 42 of them, 16% actually did not go in for cord blood banking, but that was also of that 16%, 42 actually didn't have enough information to be able to say yes, they wanted to use it. How do we actually store the cord blood product if we have? What are the innovations and the challenges that we face when we're doing stem cell banking, and whether there is any benefit of a particular model for stem cell banking or not, especially in the Indian context. So what are the basics of stem cell transplants? What we call stem cells are actually mother cells, as we okay. So there's a request to start from the previous slide where we talk about stem cell what are stem cells actually. So we talk about the basics of stem cells. A stem cell is actually a cell that can replicate itself and form into more of its own kind. That is, it can form single cells that replicate itself, or it can differentiate into more mature cells. So if I was to take the example of blood cells where we are doing bone marrow transplants, then we can form what is called the blood has mainly three types of cells. So hemoglobin or red blood cells, which give you the red color of your blood and are responsible for the oxygenation of the whole body. Then the white blood cells, which are your infection forming cells, and platelets, which are the cells that stop bleeding. So a mother cell or a stem cell can actually differentiate into any of these three different structures and can help you to form more of the same kind of, more of red blood cells or more of white blood cells. That is where the stem cell comes into play. What are the kinds of transplants that we can do? There are mainly two kinds of transplants, and this is important because when you're looking at cord blood, saving cord bloods, you need to ask these from the cord blood company that is coming into you, the bank that comes into you, as to what kind of transplants would these stem cells be eligible for. There are two main kinds. One is called the autologous and the second is the allogenic types. The autologous is where the cells are only used from the same person. So if I was to store my cells, my stem cells, then they would be used only for me. that would be an autologous transplant. Whereas if I was to use an allogenic for an allogenic purpose, it means that these cells will be used for somebody else. Now, if I am a normal donor, then I can donate my stem cells for somebody who is a patient and can be used for those people, the patient, for his benefit. So an allogenic transplant is used from normal donor cells, using normal donor cells for patients to replace their stem cells, which is the main indication in the pediatric population for doing a bone marrow transplant. The next question that a lot of us get asked is, what is the source of these stem cells? How are these stem cells taken from the donor? So the first stem cells are actually taken from the bone marrow itself. This started in way back in the 1950s, where from your hip bone we would take the stem cells, because the bone marrow is actually present in all the bones of the body. So the hip bone was like one good bone from where we could draw out the bone marrow, separate the stem cells from there, and then give that to the donor. The first stem cell transplant was done in the 1960s, was using the bone marrow as their source for transplants. More recently, we've actually gone into what is called peripheral blood stem cell harvesting, or PBSC as the short form that we like to use for. This is the preferred mode of collecting stem cells right now. In this, what we do is that we give you an injection so that the stem cells from the bone marrow will overspill into the blood itself. And from there, we can skim it off. So like we take off platelets in a platelet donation, we can take off just the stem cells that we need for the stem cell harvest, and then return the rest of the blood back to you. So as you can see in the cartoon in the middle, you can see that the patient has two inlet and outlets attached to him. In one end, the blood goes into the machine, and there the stem cells are taken out, and the rest of the blood is returned back to him. Here, because we are using the excess of stem cells which have overflown into the blood, it does not have any harm or damage to the donor at all. The third method that we can also use, and the one that we would really like to use, is what is called umbilical cord blood sampling. It was first used in the 1988 in Paris, where a young boy for Fanconi's anemia was transplanted using the cord blood cells from his sibling. The way a cord blood function is that after the baby is born, whatever blood remains in the placenta and the umbilical cord, that is taken out, stripped out. It is a very, very good source of stem cells, and that 35 to 40, 50 ml of blood actually gives us about at least 2 to 3 million stem cells, which can be used for young children and as a ready source, because they're already HLA typed and then cryopreserved. So these are the three main methods of stem cells. Use these stem cells. The chances that you would need to use stem cells for yourself are very few, unless 80 plus diseases that we can use as allogenic transplants, or we can use it for other people for different conditions, be it blood related, so blood cancers, or even diseases like thalassemia or sickle cell anemia. We will go through a list of some of them in the next slide. However, there are a lot of studies being carried out to see whether it has benefit in other diseases apart from this blood system itself, the hemopoietic system. Some of these conditions being some brain disorders like Hurler syndrome, or some neurological conditions where the brain kind of deteriorates and does not function properly. Or it can also be used for some bone disorders where the bone is not functioning properly, like an osteogenesis or and those kind of conditions. Diseases like cerebral palsy, autism, type 1 diabetes, or hypoxic brain injury, hearing loss, these are still being researched on, and they have not been put into clinical practice at the moment. So this is research. I cannot vouch for, and I don't know if there's any center in India that is actually going to be doing stem cell transplant for these conditions. However, we know that there is research being done, and in a few years we may have some good news for you in these areas as well. So the indications that we would like to do an allogenic transplant for children would be a lot of cancerous conditions, although we can say that in pediatrics, cancer by itself is very curable in the first instance. But in case cancer does come back, then the stem cell transplant offers them a hope of actually a cure again. But not just cancerous conditions, even non-cancerous conditions like thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, aplastic anemia, where a bone marrow doesn't function at all, then we can replace the non-functional or dysfunctional marrow to with the normal stem cells to this patient. We can use it for immunodeficiency disorders as well, where your body doesn't have the immune mechanism to fight infections, and that can sometimes be overcome by doing a bone marrow transplant. In some cases where you have platelet dysfunctions, where you're very prone to bleeding because your platelets don't function, is also a condition where we can use them. We can use them, as I said, for neurological conditions like Krabbe's disease, or we can use it for genetic conditions like Hurler syndrome. In these patients, also transplants have been shown to be working. What I can say that is, by the trends that we are seeing, almost 1 in every 217 people will need to have a transplant for a different indication by the age of 70 years, is what the trend right now is kind of foreseen. In India, we have actually progressed a lot, and I'm very happy to share that there are a lot of centers that are actually offering transplants. The 4 major cities that we've depicted, you can see that there are at least 20 centers within the 4 major cities itself. But all over India, there are at least about 190 centers that offer bone marrow transplants. So please find out which are the centers that offer bone marrow transplants within your city, if there is one, and if you need to go to visit a pediatric oncologist there, please go ahead and find them. If not, we can always help you out to find somebody closer to your home in these places. So why do we need stem cell donors? Now we've identified that there is a need to actually do bone marrow transplants in India, just with the non-malignant condition, the non-cancerous conditions. We need to do at least about 10 to 12,000 transplants per year. However, at the moment, we are only being successful in doing about 4 to 5,000 transplants per year. And one of the reasons why we cannot actually do the transplants that we need to do is because of not being able to find good donors for these patients. So the first basic of being able to do a transplant is to be able to get an HLA match. Unless the HLA matches, HLA is there are proteins within your stem cells, your body, in the immune system that actually need to match so that we can get a good balance between the donor and the patient's stem cells. And by this, we hope to change the patient's immune system completely. Unlike a liver transplant or a kidney transplant, here we are changing your immune system completely, so we can actually find that we can change the immune system, so we can actually get rid of all medications by the end of the year itself, once the graft starts functioning very well. So once the HLA, we find an HLA match, only then can we actually proceed to a transplant. Now, the best bet for finding an HLA match is within your family itself, because we know that half the genes come from your father, half the genes come from your mother. However, even with the best chance, the chance that you'll find a match within your family is only about 25%. Rest of the patients have to look for unrelated donors outside their family who will be an HLA match for them. That means that we have to have a very common genetic pool for them. In India, the unmatched registries, the unrelated donor registries, are very few. And also the number of donors who have registered within these registries is also very small. So we find it very difficult to find a matched unrelated donor in this situation. The third option that we have is for finding donors within the parents itself, which will be a half match transplant, where we know that only about 50% of the HLA would be matched in these patients. So what is the chance? What we would like to increase is increase the donor pool that we have. And one of the methods of doing this is by storing the cord blood, where we already have HLA typed the cord blood unit, and that then becomes available if we need to do it. again, why do we fail to find matches within the Indian registries? One, that our registries are very small. They're very young registries. The oldest registry in our country is about 15 years old, but the one with the largest number of donors is about 10 years old. But the number of donors is very less. For a population of 130 crores, we only have about 4.5 lakh donors that are registered within the registries, the Indian registries itself. Even with the cord blood banks, the public cord blood banks have got very little cord blood units that are available for the patients, and that becomes one of the biggest hitches that we face in getting units to be able to do a bone marrow transplant. Also, the cost of procurement internationally for cord blood units is very, very expensive. So in case we are looking at cord blood units from overseas, then we actually think of doing haploidentical transplants. So while we are talking about transplants, let me just give you a brief about how a transplant is actually done. So once we have the HLA match, we've identified the donor. We then do a pre-transplant evaluation for the patient. We have to make sure that the patient is actually fit to receive the transplant, which means a lot of blood workup, investigations like a CT scan, maybe an echo and MRI and stuff, to make sure that the patient is fit to tolerate the transplant, does not have any infections. And similarly, the donor undergoes a lot of tests to make sure that they are fit to donate as well. Now, with a cord blood unit, we have the advantage that all this testing has already been done, and we know that the unit is available to be used if we need to use it. Then we do conditioning for the patient who needs the transplant, which means that we give them some chemotherapy or radiation therapy or a combination of both to destroy their bone marrow completely, make space for the new stem cells to come in. And the new stem cells would then be infused like a blood transfusion. So one of the biggest myths that we hear about bone marrow transplant is that, like a liver or a kidney transplant, there is surgery involved. In a bone marrow transplant, there is actually no surgery involved. The cells are taken by an apheresis procedure, which is done in a blood bank usually, and the cells are infused into the patient like a blood transfusion into your veins. So there is actually no surgery involved in a bone marrow transplant. The problems come in after the cells have actually been given. So recovery from the transplant is the one that takes the longest. Usually you are in hospital for about a month, where we are taking care, waiting for these cells to grow and dealing with all the complications that arise because of giving the chemotherapy, monitoring for infections and other things. But hopefully at the end of the month, we find that the new cells are beginning to grow and they are changing your immune system, and therefore will be able to grow and take over the immune system for the patient. What we generally say is that you will be in hospital till about 1 month, which is the engraftment phase, where we are watching out for infections and other complications. And then we monitor you at certain time points like day 60, day 90, then 6 months, and then 1 year. And hopefully by the end of the first year, we will be able to get rid of all the medications that you are on, and you will be able to lead an absolutely normal life from then on. Yes, we would continue to follow up because we need to see what's happening in your body post the transplant. But for us and for you, have the chance to be able to live normally. The child has the opportunity to go back to school, play with his friends after that, and not be on any medications thereafter as well. So where does cord blood banking come into picture? Because this was the seminar that we had wanted to put into place. So as we said, cord blood banking was first done in the 1950s, in 1988, when Matthew Farrows was a boy who had Fanconi's anemia. Now, Fanconi's anemia is a disease where your bone marrow stops functioning. So you cannot form either blood, platelets, or white cells, and you become very, very susceptible to infections. So he had underwent a cord blood transplant from his younger sister in 1988 using the cord blood cells which had been stored. Now, Matthew is grown up. He is more than 32 years old. He's married and is also a father. And is one of the success stories that we have for cord blood banking. What are the advantages that a cord blood offers over the other donors? One, it is very, very simple. It is no risk to the donor. Once the baby is born, the placenta, which was initially thrown away, now we are using that placenta and the remaining cord blood to be able to give some stem cells and store them for a potential patient. It has a very long-term storage ability. We can store these cells for 10, 12, 13 years, provided they are stored correctly. So that is another thing that you need to watch out for when you're looking at your banking with the cord blood bank available. they're immediately available. If I decide that this cord blood unit matches my patient's requirements, I can ask for it within the next 14 days and do a transplant for this patient. These cells have the capacity to multiply and generate very quickly, and therefore there's they will grow. We know that they will grow in the patient's body. There's a very low incidence of viral infections with these patients, and there's a lower incidence of complications like GVHD with these patients. There are a few disadvantages, that because we have a very small unit available, so compared to a matched sibling donor or a matched unrelated donor, the cell dose that we get is limited. However, in pediatrics, we are often able to get a good enough cell dose with these patients, and it is a one-time supply. If I, for God forbid, I need to do another transplant, then I will need to look for another cord blood unit, but and therefore this becomes a restriction for us at some places. For adults, it actually gets to be a problem, because they may need more than one cord blood unit to be applied, and there is potential delayed engraftment. So it takes longer for the cells to grow in cord blood units as compared to a matched sibling or as compared to a mud donor. Now, but we are working on this, and we are doing innovations where we are actually looking at trying to increase the number of cells that we have by manipulations using some chemicals and medications to be increasing the number of cells. And so therefore we can give a larger cell dose to our patients when we are using a cord blood unit. And this would also decrease the cord blood size. Now, here comes the problem. Most of the private blood banks, the private cord blood banks, actually offer you storing the cord blood unit for the patient or the person from whom the cord blood has actually been taken. So if you take the cord blood from your first baby, they say that you will be only allowed to use it for the first baby itself. And therefore we thought, all the pediatricians thought that this was a big scam happening, and all the private we kind of discouraged private cord blood banking, because we know that for autologous use, there is very little indications where cord blood will actually be of any benefit to the patient itself. However, what we find is that for public cord blood banking, it is a very, very good source, which means that if you can donate the cord blood or allow it to be used for a community at large, then we can find the benefits of it, because it is a ready source of HLA matched stem cells to us, available to us. Therefore, the consensus paper that came out in the IAP actually said that we were not going to promote private cord blood banking, but what we were going to promote was community or public cord blood banking. And the ideal solution is either a community or a public cord blood system, which means that the community actually gets together and says that we will store the stem cells. However, anybody within the community, if they need to use the cord blood units, can actually use it. So if patient X has stored, patient X and patient Y have stored their cord blood units, and if patient X needs patient Y's cord blood unit, that should actually also be available for their use, is what the actual answer would be. So it's a combination of a public bank as well as a family bank, where you can actually use it for your own purposes if the need arises. However, it is also available for use for the community at large as well. So that is where the benefit of a cord blood banking would actually happen. Now, a community blood bank, as we spoke, shows that yes, it is. There are options available within India as well for this kind of a system. Public cord blood banking, there was only one public cord blood bank. However, that has also now stopped accepting fresh samples, because they realized that the logistics of trying to maintain the public cord blood bank was so huge that they were not finding it feasible. However, with the community, you can actually help each other out. There is access to these samples that are already stored. The current inventory is of about 50,000 units that are available, and the chance that you will find a match is pretty high in these patients. Yes, it is a bit of a costly affair. However, it does sound reasonable when we look in the bigger scale, the bigger picture of life itself. So what should I say to the obstetrician who has to counsel the patient for umbilical cord blood banking? what we have is a consensus statement that we have made, and that is available for you as the handout also. If you go to the handout section of this webinar, you will find that the consensus paper is there, which you can download and you can take for your own personal reading, or you can also just read it from there if you want to. So we do know that cord blood is a very rich source of stem cells for us, and we can use that for treating a number of conditions, especially in the children's, the pediatric population, and especially in the blood and immunology department. We know that that is a proven area where we can use the stem cells. They can be safely collected from the placenta. So there was a question in the question and answer section, which I just went through. The cells are actually stored after the baby is born and the umbilical cord is cut. Whatever excess blood remains in the placenta and the umbilical cord is stripped off that placenta and umbilical cord in a sterile manner and is collected in a sterile manner and stored in a sterile manner. It is then sent for HLA typing and for testing to look for any infections, and it is stored with the HLA type available on a database. That is how the cord blood unit will be made available. What we need is public cord blood banking, which means that this cord blood should be available to anyone and everyone who is an HLA match. Autologous cord blood banking is not being advocated at all. We do not want you to store stem cells for your own child. We want it to be stored for a sibling or for somebody else who can use it. Community blood banking offers you a kind of a mid path in this way, that you are still storing it, but it can be available for others. And if somebody else's HLA matches your patient, then you can actually use it there as well. So I'm going to stop my presentation here itself. In case you have questions, please put them into the question and answer section, and we will try and take these quickly as we can. So we have a few questions and I can go through them. Please put them in the question and answer section. So we will try and we'll put this. So the first question comes from Muskan Singh, who's asking, why should we opt for this? Then the answer to that is that stem cells are a very they're a source that we can use to cure a number of diseases which may happen in the future. However, if you don't store your stem cells right now, that opportunity is lost. So that is why the option of trying to store the stem cells when your baby is born is being recommended to us. We have gone through the indications of umbilical cord blood use. There are a number of indications, ma'am, that it can be used for a lot of cancerous conditions, as well as a lot of non-cancerous conditions like thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, immunodeficiency disorders, or some bone disorders or brain disorders as well. So a number of conditions where it can be used for. There was another question who's saying, I'm interested in storing umbilical cord blood as my due date is nearing, but want to know, can we take it for a 1-year storage or can we take it for 25 years or something? Ma'am, you will have to discuss this with your cord blood bank as to what are the indications or timelines that they would be storing it for. What I am interested in saying to you is that make sure that this is not just for autologous use. It should be available for anyone that you desire it to be made available to. So whether it be a brother or a sister or anybody else, if you want to make it available to, you should be they should have the provision to make it available for people beyond the patient for which it is being collected to. And the timelines will have to be discussed with the unit that you are storing it with. Can you use stem cells for ourselves, meaning for the parents? Well, yes, ma'am, you can actually use them as well. So if you are a HLA match with your child, you are potentially a donor for your child as well, and the child becomes the donor for you as well. So yes, you can use them for yourself as well if you are an HLA match in those conditions. So there are, if you were an adult and you had cancer and then you found that your child was a 10x10 match with you, then you could use the stem cells that have been stored, or you could also use the fresh cells that you can take from your child, because fresh cell donation is also safe, very safe. An expectant father, can I use my baby's cord blood cells needed in the future? Yes, sir, you can. And as I said, what we are really wanting to push for is for for them to be used for the community. Using the stem cells for your own child would not be recommended, because if your child developed any disease, then the stem cells are also defective in that case. So if your child had thalassemia major, then his stem cells are defective as well. So his own stem cells will not be used for the thalassemia major transplant. We would have to look for somebody who has normal stem cells to be able to replace the defective stem cells. How does the cord blood cell unit be taken? We've just gone through that, ma'am. How is it stored? It is kept in cryopreservation, so it is stored at very low temperatures so that the cells do not die. There is a question about haploidentical stem cell transplants. Sir, haploidentical stem cell transplants means that normally when we are doing a bone marrow transplant, we are looking at a very good HLA match, which means that we are looking at a 10/10 or an 8/8 or a 6/6 match when we are looking the HLA matching. But when you're thinking about haploidentical transplants, we are willing to work with half-match transplants. So we know that anything that is less than that, so an 8/10 or a 6/10 or even a 5/10 would be classified as a half-matched or a haploidentical transplant. How is the cord blood stem cell taken? I think we've answered that question already. How do you know that the stem cell will differentiate into the cell you want, for example, leukemia? So, sir, we know that the donor stem cells are normal stem cells. That is why the patient has not developed the disease so far. And that is the expectation, that their stem cells, being immunological cells, will also be able to pick up any of the abnormal cells or cancer cells within the patient's body. We know that if they are normal, they should be growing into normal cells itself. So that is why we say that they will grow into normal cells, and if there are any remaining cancer cells in your body, they should be able to have the immune mechanism to recognize them as being cancerous and be able to kill them. However, there is no 100% guarantee that these cells will not, in a later time, maybe 40 years, 50 years down the line, have developed leukemia as well. But 40 to 50 years down the line, we are looking at a child who's already lived his majority of his life as well. So the chance that he will develop a leukemia later on is very, very little in that case. So that is what the implication is. Since in your body, in the donor's body, they are not forming cancer cells, then they should not form cancer cells within the patient's body as well. If the stem cells is used by someone else in the community, and when a requirement arises for us, what will we do? Well, we hope that then in the community there will be some stem cells that are available for you as well, because we know that the HLA pool is common, and so therefore there would be some cells. There will be, when there are more cord blood units available, there will be some cells from that same community pool available for you as well. How do you find a community or a public bank near you? The internet is a very good source, sir. And if you are an expectant parent, then I'm sure that the labs would be coming to you, the blood banks would be coming to you to ask you to store the stem cells. You need to ask them the right questions and see that they satisfy your need for these for cord blood banking. The cost of storing and retrieving the cord blood cells, each cord blood bank at the moment have their own prices. So that will be something that you will have to look into. And you have to debate whether we want to go into any particular bank. We do not recommend any particular cord blood bank at all. So it is entirely your choice. But as I said, look into the few questions and make sure that your queries have been answered before you decide to store the cord blood unit. Have you used cord blood samples from the company LifeCell? Yes, we have used. We've used it for 2 children. One of them had thalassemia major, and the child is doing very well, although the child still has about is not yet past the 1-year mark, and therefore we cannot disclose names, and we cannot share that information with you. But I can very safely say I've also used it for another child, again for a brain disorder this time, and they are both doing very well. In case in a community banking, what if my baby's cord cells get exhausted by being used by somebody else in the community? How does it work? As I said, ma'am, the bigger the pool, the more the chances that you will find a match. So if the pool is good enough, then you know that there is a common genetic pool, so the chances that you will find another cord blood unit or something else that matches your requirements. But unless you store it, you will never be able to get into that possibility that I or my family will need the stem cells in the future. So the possibility that they will need it in the future is low. It's very low. But as we said that we are reaching an age where we are needing more and more more and more bone marrow transplants. We think that almost one in about 217 people, as I mentioned in the presentation, will need a transplant by the time that they are 70. We know that there is a very big need for transplants in India at the moment. We are not being able to satisfy that need. But and this is an area that is actually growing in research at the moment. However, for your own personal use, then the incidence, and I hope that that's true, will be very little. I hope that you remain healthy throughout. However, as I know that cord blood banking is only one opportunity you get when the baby is born. After that, you don't have the opportunity to store the stem cells. So that is something that you need to look at, whether you want to use that opportunity or you don't want to use the opportunity. What is the percentage of conditions or diseases for which stem cells are required and around what age? So stem cells can be required for a transplant right from birth itself for different indications, sir. You have cancer indications where you have children who are having bone marrow transplants because their cancer is such that cannot be treated by chemotherapy alone and needs a bone marrow transplant. You also have children who have non-cancerous conditions like thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, immunodeficiency disorders. In India, I can buy thalassemia and sickle cell anemia itself. We have at least about 50,000 children being born every year with thalassemia and potentially can be cured by a bone marrow transplant itself. So knowing that we need to do at least 50,000 transplants a year, and however, we are at the moment just close to about 5,000 to 7,000 at the moment. The average cost of collection and storage, ma'am, as I said, it varies from every cord blood bank. Some of them will give you figures of 15 to 17,000 for the first year, and then maybe 7 to 10,000 every year. Some of them store it for 7 years and then ask you for a charge later on and take a lump sum amount initially. So there are different ways that people are trying to package this as well. Details of community blood bank and how can we ask and do. Ma'am, again, I would recommend you that you put in community blood bank on the net and look at this options that are available to you. I only know of one cord blood unit, cord blood banking system that actually does community blood bank at the moment. But I'm sorry that I won't be able to disclose the name because then it means that I am trying to push them in a way possible. Can it be used for the same child in the future and from whom it was taken? Ma'am, there are very few indications where we are going to be using it for the same child itself, because if we think that the stem cell is the cell that is defective, then we will not be able to use it for the same child. However, there are some conditions where we are using a bone marrow transplant as an option to give higher dose of chemotherapy. In those patients, yes, we can use the cord blood unit for those for the transplant as well. However, it can be used for your sibling, it can be used for somebody else as well. Will this minor is not a disease? Thalassemia minor is just a condition. Anybody who has thalassemia minor has the chance of past do not suffer from thalassemia at all. So thalassemia minor is not a disease that needs to be treated at all. So no, it will not be cured. What you need to take care of if you are a thalassemia minor is that you don't marry another thalassemia minor patient, and in case you're already married and you realize that, both to make sure that they don't have thalassemia major, because if there are any chances of match within your family numbers, approximately 20%, why should the donor pay a huge amount for its preservation? So the concept, sir, is that each person helps the other person. The community blood bank model actually wants to help the community. So you are pitching in to help everybody, and therefore in case you need any help, this help should also be made available to you. And what I understand from the community cord blood banking model is that this money is not, the cord blood unit is not just available for the patient, it is also available for the sibling, for the parents, the grandparents, or anybody else in that community who's decided to store the cord blood unit with them. So I think it is a good option because it's a lifetime investment that you have made for your patients. It's just like your term insurance, that your life insurance, that you, in case something happens to you during your lifetime, your the others around you should be benefited from it as well. So as a lifetime investment, the investment does make sense. In case the stem cells are being shared, is there a consent to be taken from the actual donor? Not from in the case of the donor itself, but in case of a public cord blood bank, there is no consent. What are the things that we need to look at while selecting a cord blood bank, because we are expectant parents? Well, sir, what you need to look for is that the small print should say that this should be made available for both autologous and allogenic use. So in case you need it for somebody beside the child that you are storing the stem cells with, they should be made available for that as well. Look at what other options they're giving to you. Are they giving the option of extending the facility for other family members, where the cord blood or the stem cells can be used to treat cancers, and your oncologist will one of the reasons one is that yes, there is a lack of awareness for cord blood banking. Two, there are more private banks that approach them, not public banks. So therefore, they're discouraging private cord blood banking. That is one of the reasons why. Gynecologists will not promote it because they also do not want to be involved with private cord blood banks as well. So that is it. I didn't do stem cell banking for the first kid. Now my due date for the second kid is next month. If I do the second kid, will it be helpful for my first kid? Ma'am, again, you need to look at whether they will make the cord blood unit available for the first kid and what are their small print for it. Will they do it for a pre-existing disease? Will they not do it for a pre-existing disease? Those would be the indications that you will be looking at when you try and store the cord blood unit. However, I will recommend that if you can get a community bank or if you can get a public bank to store your cord blood, then please go ahead and store the cord blood unit for your second child as well. In case of a community banking, what if my baby cell get exhausted? We've already answered that question, sir. I think what is the disorders that under research, what is the scope of stem cells in regenerative medicine? So, ma'am, we already treat a number of diseases with bone marrow transplants or stem cell transplants. The majority indications for pediatrics for children are non-cancerous conditions. So as I said, disorders that are related to your blood, be it your red blood cell disorders, so thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, or unstable hemoglobinopathies, related to your white blood cells, which are infection related disorders, so your immunodeficiency disorders that come in, some of them are called SCADE or Costman syndrome or Omenn syndrome. These are indications. Related to your platelet dysfunction disorders, those will also be indications for transplant. We will also do transplants for diseases related to the brain, for some indications where we know that the enzymes that are produced are also produced by blood-like cells. So we can do it for those disorders as well. Like Krabbe's disease, we can do it for, there are some enzyme-related disorders like what we call connective tissue disorders, Hurler syndrome, Hunter syndrome. Again, indications where transplant will work for these patients. There's a lot of research happening in regenerative medicine. So they're looking at using it for cerebral palsy. They're looking at for Duchenne's muscular atrophy. You're looking at for spinal muscular atrophy, SMAs. But these are research at the moment. They haven't actually been proven to be any benefit at the moment. They're looking at hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy or cerebral palsy as trying to regenerate the brain with that, with cardiac injury or with traumatic injuries also. But again, so far we have only heard of research being done. We don't have a clinical application at the moment for these conditions at the moment. How long can we store the stem cells? Potentially, you can actually store them lifelong. But usually we say that if they're stored for about 7 to 10 years, should be good enough for you. Especially private blood banking, there are a lot of them. You just have to actually sign up looking at cord blood banking to get them to cord blood. You store your cord blood with them. If this society banking, then why is it so costly? Countries like Canada do it by default and no specific charges. Yes, that is one of the problems in the Indian society, sir. Our government has not made a public cord blood bank available and does not have any intention of doing it as well. The one public bank that was there was functioning because of NGO support, and now because it's lost that support, has also stopped collecting cells. So unless the community decides to pitch in, we actually can't help each other. We can't expect the government to actually help us at the moment. And in the present scenario, I think it will be very, very difficult to do that. So do I talk to my delivery for storing cord blood units during delivery? Ma'am, you need to speak prior to that, because everything needs to be made ready by when your delivery is actually happening. You cannot decide a day before and then decide that I want to store the cord blood unit. We will have to speak with the cord blood bank and make this kit and everything available to do the collection once your baby is born. So plan it before you do it. Why is this concept not famous in India? Again, the concept is not famous because people have not been aware of it. And that is why this webinar actually decided to take place, because we want to spread the awareness that cord bloods is a good source of stem cells for us, and we would like it to be available for public use. So that is one of the reasons why this webinar has actually been started. When you introduce stem cells into a person's body, how will they differentiate into a neural cell or a kidney cell or a blood stem cell only? So, ma'am, what we know is that when we are taking the hemopoietic stem cell, we actually identify the stem cell based on the properties of the stem cell. So the machine is programmed to collect the stem cells that will mature into blood cells only. And that is how we will collect only those stem cells which will mature into blood cells. That is how the function works. So a hemopoietic stem cell has certain proteins on its surface which we can identify, and then we program the machine to collect only those cells, and that is how it works. So we do not expect it to mature into a neural cell or a kidney cell, but it will mature only into a blood cell. How 40 ml samples? Can we stop here?
Yes,
I'll just use the last this thing. 40 ml sample can be used for treatment number of times. It is a one-time use, sir. So the 40 ml will be used once and then it will be finished. It cannot be regenerated at the moment. Yes, we are working on increasing the number of cells available to us. But again, as I said, we are working on it. We don't have that available. I will stop here.
Yes, ma'am. We can take a last question here. There's a question from Deepanshu Chauhan. Ma'am, cord tissues banking is not allowed by ICMR. We can answer this and we can close it off now.
So ICMR is also not wanting to have private cord blood banking. It is trying to discourage private cord blood banking for autologous stem cell use. So that is why it is being discouraged. We do not want people to store the stem cells for their own use. We want them to be available for public use. That is also coming from the ICMR, and that is also the consensus statement that we have made. We are not pushing for private cord blood banking at all. We want them to be available to the community. So that is where we are.
Thanks, Nal. Thanks for your time. And for the audience, this recording will be available in Lifestyle YouTube channel, most probably in 3 days. So you can visit there. If you have any questions, you can write over our channel. Thanks for attending, ma'am. Thanks for your valuable time, ma'am.
Thank you for pitching in, and please stay safe. COVID is a bad time for all of us, and the only way we can save ourselves is by keeping our social distancing and working from home and staying indoors. So please stay safe, all of you, and take care. See you. Bye-bye.